Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Innovate and Caffeinate. We are so excited to be here with you today. And this is a regional approach in Murray, Callaway County and Hopkins County. And so we're so glad to be sharing this with Christian County and all of you out there as well. Today, we're really excited. One of my favorites is MB Roland. And this place is absolutely amazing. If you haven't had a chance to come and check it out, you're definitely going to want to do that. So, Paul, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, so we know each other a little while, but for those out there who aren't familiar, tell me a little bit about you and MB Roland.
Yeah, so it gets a little tougher to tell this because we've been in business longer each time we tell this story. But so we opened in 2009. My wife and I started the company. And like a lot of folks in this area, I got here through Fort Campbell and decided this is where myself and my wife wanted to live, and went through the process of opening the distillery at a time when you only had distillery tours in the middle part of Kentucky and Jack Daniels and larger things like that. But we wanted to bring more of a smaller vibe to it versus your larger production operations. And now, being in business for 10 years, ironically, we're starting to figure out how to do some things more like the larger folks to be more efficient. And that's more business than it is on our production process. But the actual way we started was just an idea, hope and a prayer kind of thing. It wasn't necessarily, anything that well put together, because at the time you really didn't have a whole lot of information. And I guess resources is a great way to put it for particularly small scale distilleries. And so, we kind of put things together in a hodgepodge, almost like this should work with that kind of situation, and made it work well for us, and learned a lot of lessons early on when we were very small. We were, didn't have as many people on payroll and things like that. And as we have evolved with the business, now it comes down to trying to grow, but at the same time still be the same identity that we opened with in a lot of ways. Because, this is a great thing, but we distribute in a lot of markets now. We distribute in California, we distribute in Texas and Illinois and Florida and many states and places. And we don't see that ending anytime soon with the growth that we've experienced in our first years doing this. So, we're definitely thinking long term, and how do we, move this forward for the next 10 or 20 years. That's where we are right now.
Now, Paul, I remember, and by the way, I just want you to know, I have a bottle right here behind me of your product. We love it so much. But I remember when you guys started, and again, you're right, you were the first. It was in a cornfield. I was living near there at the time. And in the middle of nowhere, you guys started this up. And like you said, just hodgepodge, putting things together. Did you have any idea how big this would be, and that it would also start a trend and create a craft tour in the area?
Well, we weren't thinking that way at the time. We were more or less thinking, can we start a business and do this and make this work? And is this something we can do for the rest of our lives? And everything else has kind of happened around us as far as other distilleries and businesses, similar businesses. And of course, there were other people before us that I got some help from that, not necessarily in the distilling industry, but in the overall tourism and adult beverage business. But definitely didn't see this coming. And I always tell people, I say, I look like the smartest person in the world because we started our business right as the bourbon boom was starting to happen. But I promise you, it wasn't because I was that smart.
Well, you are a West Point grad, so, that says something. But, and I also remember in the beginning, how much did marketing play in? Because, again, as you were starting out and as we became popular in this region, you also made national news. You were on some big programs.
Yeah, we've kind of made the rounds, and ironically, at this point, we've also learned, some limitations to that on different media organizations, whether it's large, household name kind of thing, or a guy in a truck in a production company. But the biggest thing is we are unapologetically authentic. And I think people see that and understand that whether they come visit our place or they learn about our business. We started very small and simple with a few bucks in our pocket. I mean, when I say a few bucks, we're talking literally a few dollars I'd saved up, and then a SBA loan, and we've evolved from there. So a lot of things on the property, if we had a lot of money to start with, would have been addressed or done differently. And, we've made it work and rolled with it, if you will. So, yeah, as far as the whole process of, growth and how that comes into play with a bigger business and moving and stuff. I mean, I don't know what to tell you other than I definitely didn't see this coming 10 years ago as far as our industry, and definitely not our business, because our idea was to have something to make a living, not something that we were going to look at and go, okay, we're probably going to have, 30 or 40 employees in 10 years. And we've got 15 employees right now, that now this is for real. And we really are trying to figure out at this point, or we're focusing is a better way to put it, on kind of managing our growth in a good way.
One thing I always tell people when I talk about MB Roland is it reminds me of the Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come, because you guys really were in the middle of a cornfield when you built this thing. And I had at the time, my job was director of military affairs. We had lots of events to bring the military into our community. And then here you were, you built this, and they came by the droves. I mean, just so, and anytime you go to any of your events, you see a lot of military there. Did you, I know that you were in the Army and that military brought you here to Fort Campbell. Did you expect that?
Well, it took a while it took about 3 years for things to get into what I would call a semi-comfortable place. And what I mean is, this world, for those that aren't that familiar with Exit 89, First Kentucky exit, for the longest time, it was no man's land. And then we were here along with a truck stop. And so you kind of got to want to make a point to come out here to visit us. And so the downside is it took a little bit of time for that to build up. And then after that, the interstate traffic was what really picked up. But I think a large part of that is the interstate traffic has picked up in general going down I-24, as we all see and know and wish it was, had more lanes, but oh well. But that's been good for us, that growth. And then on top of that, this military community here supported us, and we've tried to support them as well. And I think everyone who works here either was, or has a family member that's military. And it's not that it's a requirement, it's just happened that way because of who we attract and who we are. Everyone here kind of halfway speaks Army, if that makes sense. Yeah. Some of us better than others, but that really helps, because that's a big part of our community here. And not only that, it's a big part of who we are as far as our personality, because like I said, all of us that have been here have some kind of connection to the military.
Sure. Let's go back to the marketing for a minute and the signs from the Interstate. So since you started, we now have Casey Jones Distillery. There's another, a couple of distilleries across the border in Tennessee, and you guys have all been working together. But tell me about the signs on the Interstate, how important that was, how you came to get those signs, and that process a little bit.
Yeah, it's a state level thing with Kentucky, and Kentucky has one guy that's in charge of every interstate sign in the entire state. So the bad news is it takes you about 2 or 3 years to get your sign up. The good news is the signs, our brown signs on the interstate obviously gave us some legitimacy that we don't have with the history of our business. We haven't been in business since, 1897 or something like that. So it definitely gives people some attention and knowing, okay, we've been here long enough to have a sign. We've been here long enough to have that much of a, record, at least at this point, is probably something we're seeing. And most people that come and visit us and they go to other distilleries, particularly the big ones, because my friends that are small, I don't want to throw them under the bus. We're all friends. But when they go to the big distilleries, it's a big factory with a lot of moving pieces. It's hard to digest all the information you're taking. It's hard to look at the equipment and really understand what's going on sometimes. And not to put down tour guides, but our tour guides, because we're a small business, I mean, they know a lot more than a typical tour guide that's just been given a very specific type of information to regurgitate. They know me, and I mean, when I say they know me, our people that work here, we talk all the time. They ask a lot of questions. We have a lot of dialogue about industry stuff, product stuff, things that they specifically have people come and talk to them about. And most of the tour guides that have been here long enough to where you're getting a very high level of information, very accurate information, that you're not going to necessarily find that same level of attention, if you will, from people at your larger distilleries. So people come here, they really understand the process, they really enjoy themselves, they feel like, because we're basically an Amish place with a house and a few buildings, so it feels very home-like and farm-like here.
Yeah.
And that's the atmosphere we are, as opposed to, you know, huge industrial application, which is great, and we might get there someday. But people are very refreshed a lot of times to see the way that we provide, you know, the whole experience here with the tasting, the tours, and everything.
Now let me ask you this. I know that you also, not only have you established this distillery, but you have evolved through different changes and different times and come up with new ideas and new things. So can we talk about, you know, picking on the porch, the mashery, and how you guys come up with, you know, what these things that you're going to do and go forward with them?
Right. Well, I mean, we'll bring back something next year, I'm assuming, but I think all of us are done assuming at this point. So just so everyone knows, that's the penciled in idea, is we'll start doing some type of events again next year. What they look like, I can't tell you. And to be honest with you, we have been so fortunate, Kelly, that COVID happened when and how it did for us. And what I mean is, if this would have happened for us 5 or 10 years ago, I don't know if we'd be in business still. Really? But because of where we are as a business, we sell a lot of product through, you know, normal liquor channels to multiple states. That's starting to be really the main part of our business as far as money coming in. And so, as we all know, been reading in the news, and I'm sure joking with friends, everyone's drinking a lot more, so we haven't had any issue sending out product, let's put it that way. And so honestly, we feel blessed in the sense that we're at this point in our business where we can absorb anything that's going on right now and, you know, move through this, and we'll get back to doing some type of events again. It's just we're all in the same boat there. We don't know what we're looking at right now.
Right. So I'll come back to COVID in a minute, but for the picking on the porch, for those who aren't familiar with the picking on the porch and the mashery, how did all that come to be? And were you, again, surprised at how big that would become?
Yeah, I would say we were surprised how big it would become, because
how many is it now? I mean, for those who aren't used to it, tell me, like, from the beginning to now.
It's about, well, we started off our first few events with, 50 people. It was a person up on the porch singing, and we had a few people and a few hay bales, and, it was nice. And it was easy going, no big deal. And now it's a whole operation. We've got, maybe 2,000 people or more that come to an average event for us. And, we've got all sorts of part-time help. We've got sheriff's officers that come out here and help us with all the parking to make sure all of that's done in a very sensible way, and all the security. So, there's a lot going on with that stuff now. We kind of got it down to somewhat of a process, as you might expect. But obviously the big thing we can never plan for is Mother Nature. So I can't lie, it's been a little bit of a relief not watching the forecast all summer long like I normally do. So yeah. I have enjoyed that aspect of not having outdoor events, but that's really the only piece of it that I'm have enjoyed. We kind of have all missed having the events and having that kind of fun buzz. You know, they're a lot of work, but we kind of do look forward to, you know, just the time of year, because you're in the middle of the summertime. It's, you know, everyone's having a good time, and a lot of us haven't been able to do that kind of stuff this year. So I'm sure we'll have we'll have some record numbers next year. We're already planning on that.
Yeah, I think everybody is definitely ready for when that does open back up. We'll all be in full force. And so let's talk about that a little bit, moving into, you know, how you've evolved over time in growing your business, and now you're in a whole different area with COVID. How have you all had to change your operations? You've obviously had to cancel your events, but you're seeing people, the distillers I'm talking to are seeing people who are wanting to get outside, spend some time taking these tours. So how has that affected you?
It's been somewhat minimal. And I mean, we were closed for a few months, you know, March, April, most of May. So, you know, to retail traffic as far as tastings and tours. So we kind of shut that off for a couple months. Coincidentally, that was when we were producing a huge amount of hand sanitizer, and that stuff was going all over the place, all over the country, just to whoever was needing it. And that kind of filled that void for us while we were closed. Once we opened back up in May, though, or June, you know, it was a little bit of getting comfortable with, you know, we're trying to figure out how to do what can we do without a mask? What can we do without a mask? What can the customer do to still have the same experience here? And luckily for us, I mean, our tour is pretty much outside, so you're able to not wear a mask on a tour. And if you're tasting alcohol, you can't wear a mask. So, I mean, it really doesn't change the overall experience here too much. I will say we made a point with some folks that have specifically asked us about, you know, hey, I've got a family member that's got a real health concern. We don't want to put them in a high-risk situation, and we've made accommodations for those kinds of people, planning something at the end of the day when there's no one else here, that kind of thing. Or moving a group outside, moving a group inside, you know, but it's very simple, relatively minimal for us.
Now, going back to the sanitizer, I mean, again, you were one of the first ones I heard doing that at all. Were a lot of the distillers talking to each other, or, I mean, you guys just, when you started that, it just took off?
We talked to a lot of other distillers to start with, but because we did not know what was going to happen with the FDA and if we would even be allowed to essentially, I don't know, have a few accommodations to make sure we didn't have to have a 100% FDA registration in order to sell the product, because that process takes some time and money and expertise, to be honest with you. And so we were kind of waiting, several of us talking, going, what's going to happen here? Well, then the Department of the Treasury and the FDA both came down and said, okay, if you're a distillery and you want to participate and help make hand sanitizer, you don't have to pay taxes on the alcohol that no one's drinking. So that's great. And then the other side of it was seeing what the FDA would and would not allow. And honestly, it was a learning process as we got into it. So come to find out, we were doing it right, which is great. And we did it right as far as, you know, going through the proper channels for registration and making sure our product was at the right specification as far as, you know, for the health concerns that can come. And I don't know if people have heard about, of course, your issues with some of the out of country hand sanitizer that has high methanol amounts or gasoline interspersed within it because they didn't get it from the right place, get alcohol from the right place. We were able to avoid all that. And mainly the reason why is because we have an ethanol plant here in Hopkinsville, and they're making FDA grade ethanol every day of the week, and they can. So because we had that as a resource, we didn't actually make the alcohol for the sanitizer. What we did was we bought it from the ethanol plant, and then we mixed and blended all the items that need to go in, just like if we were making a batch of pink lemonade or something like that. And then we bottled it and got it labeled and registered properly, and there you go. That was pretty much the whole process. But making sure you have, you know, the proper grade of ethanol is probably the most important step, and we had that taken care of.
Okay, so we're getting ready to get towards the close. I want to ask you a couple more questions. For those, so this program, again, is designed to help small businesses and entrepreneurs learn from each other. So what would you say would be one or two, what are some of your biggest obstacles? And then what would be the advice for those out here who may be thinking of starting a business in general or getting involved in starting something up? What would be your advice to them?
Oh boy. A lot of things are running through my head right now on some of that stuff. And for us, to give you kind of two examples, two things that I never saw happening with us as a business, and this might be kind of particular for us as a distillery, but this can apply to any business. One was when we opened our distillery, we did not have a lot of the normal legal abilities to do the things that, say, a small winery or brewery in Kentucky could do at the time. And, whether it be our sampling or selling cocktails with our own product, things like that. And so what we ended up doing, or what happened by default, is we're now involved in the legislative process for alcohol law, and have been involved since 2009. And we've changed a lot of laws to help us and help our industry, and honestly help the consumer, because it's a better experience for them when they come and visit these places. So that's one thing I didn't see coming, but depending on your job, your industry, your business, that might be something to at least pay attention to. And one way that we got involved with that was through our trade association, the Kentucky Distillers Association. Of course, they're a large, well-established entity, but you've got, well, any chamber of commerce, it's essentially the same kind of concept, but your trade associations getting involved in that kind of thing, your industry, especially if you're a small business, it's going to help you. It's going to help your other small business people. And what I've learned, especially being in a business where my biggest competition is a multi-billion-dollar international conglomerate, is all of my little distiller friends are friends. And even if we technically compete against each other, we still understand how our industry and how our business works. And when you're battling against your usual suspects, Jack Daniels, Jim Beam, and so on, to try to even just get your product on the shelf. I don't necessarily mean to sell as much as them or anything close. Just to get it on the shelf sometimes is a lot of work. And so trade associations, other people in your business and industry, especially if it's tourism related, it's going to only help you in the long run to try to reach out and work with other folks. I do understand. Well, it's the same thing with the restaurant world. You'll have multiple restaurants next to each other or whatever, shopping districts. I understand there's limits on this, but when everyone does better, or some people do better, a lot of times everyone does better if you're all working together, if that makes sense. And in business, it's no different, especially when you're a small business. I'll be honest with you, 10 years in right now, I feel a lot more wise about that aspect right there. You don't quite understand that when you open a small business, how utterly small and isolated you are compared to a big company that has, so much resources when it comes to people and third-party contractors and whatever the heck else they got.
Right.
So your other small businesses are going to be some of your best friends and best teachers, and the best way for you to help kind of make your industry work best for you.
We've seen that a lot in every one of these we've had. In talking to small business owners and entrepreneurs, it seems that they help each other, they're working together, sharing ideas, rather it being, super competitive, which I know you each all are. There's still a lot of working together.
Yeah, I mean, especially if we're all in the same community or general area, that makes even more sense. But, to be honest with you, aside from that, definitely a few little side notes, depending on, we started as small as you possibly could, myself and my wife kept her full-time job. And so she had two jobs. She had her full-time job, and then she came home and worked. And, in that situation, having someone with some real good financial accounting experience, ability. I kind of taught myself accounting. It wasn't that big of a deal for me, but that's kind of your basic building block. I mean, we're trying to earn money. We're trying to live. We're trying to eat, use this business for a way of life. And so figuring out how to set yourself up on the best financial foundation. I don't mean money. I mean financial understanding of how you're going to take whatever money you have, translate that to your business. And then as you have, hopefully, as any business person expects, as you have money coming in, what do you do with that? And how do you allocate and budget that the best way? If you don't have someone involved, whether you can just go hire an accountant to kind of help you that when you're getting started, but really kind of doing your best to be, and it doesn't have to be that complicated. Everyone uses QuickBooks, but you get QuickBooks, you set up your categories the right way, start on a good solid footing there, know what you're doing, because that's really going to help you out long term.
Perfect. Okay, so we're going to wrap up, but before we go, if someone hasn't been to MB Roland, and of course I encourage everyone to go to MB Roland, it's phenomenal. What's the number one? What are the top sellers? What would you recommend to visitors coming out your way?
If you come visit here, the products you're going to want to try, if you are more on the bourbon or whiskey side, obviously try our standard, we call it our flagship bourbon, but then also our dark fired bourbon that's made with corn that we smoke here, just like now, this time of year with all the barn smoking, we smoke it the same way year round, smoke the corn, not tobacco. And we make whiskey with the corn. And so it has a very unique, almost smoky campfire aroma and flavor to it. We say that when we cook that product in the distillery, it kind of smells like Cracker Barrel. It really does that.
Nice.
And then the other one, of course, well, there's two other ones. One is going to be, we just came out with this product about a year ago called Kentucky Azul. It's made with Mexican agave, and we ferment and distill it and age it in our bourbon barrels, and it's very, very unique. It's basically a Kentucky tequila, but we legally can't call it that. And then the last thing is, of course, our pink lemonade, which we used to think would only be good during summer, but apparently it's good year round. So that's one. It really doesn't matter when you come. But that one, it's just natural. So I think that's the secret. It's natural stuff. It's not flavoring out of a, lab or something.
Your pink lemonade definitely is one of your most well known, and that's definitely one of my favorites. Anyway, thank you so much, Paul. We appreciate your time again. MB Roland here in Hopkinsville, Kentucky. Is it Pembroke or is it your Pembroke?
Well, we're technically Pembroke, but you go to exit 89, Oak Grove, Pembroke exit, and there'll be signs getting you to us.
Right there. And also, once we do get back to celebrating, they have some amazing picking on the porch events, bluegrass. Go out there and take your chair, listen to some good music, have some good drinks. Always a good time. Again, we appreciate you being there. For all of our viewers out there, again, thank you so much. Tune in next Wednesday, every Wednesday morning at 8:30, where we have local and regional entrepreneurs and small business owners learning from each other. Thanks again, Paul, and hope you all have a great day.
Thanks, Kelly.